When you start with HR Analytics, it's good to know what problems and challenges you're going to run into. Do you know why HR Analytics doesn't provide value within the organization? Or do you know why systems support is so important? Let's dive in.
What are the challenges firms are facing? In this video, we'll take a very practical look at what you can expect when you start with HR Analytics in your company. In this video, we use the research of Van den Heuvel and Bondarou from 2016. They published a paper in which they interviewed a number of HR Analytics professionals and asked them for their goals with HR Analytics within their organizations, the findings, the problems they run into, etc. And in most of this video, we'll talk about this study because it has some really tangible and practical implications for everyone starting in the people and HR Analytics field. So, what are the goals of HR Analytics within firms? Well, first of all, most people report that they are trying to establish HR Analytics. And they do it by trying to prove that HR Analytics really adds value. They try to show how and under what circumstances HR Analytics can be applied within the organization. And they strive to create awareness in the organization about HR Analytics. So what you see, HR Analytics is fairly unknown, and the people that know it really have some high expectations. So the main focus of most HR Analytics professionals is to really prove the value of HR Analytics. In addition, they're trying to build alliances both within and outside of HR, and later we'll talk about why that's so important. And lastly, they report laying a foundation for conducting analysis. So, in regards to the analytical focus of HR Analytics, practitioners say that the majority of the time is spent on basic reporting and calculating metrics. There's a limited amount of actual HR Analytics, and that's why the question, is this really HR Analytics, is at the bottom of the page. Because when you are involved with basic reporting, you're not really making predictions, you're looking back at historic insights. And that's more called HR reporting, and it involves HR data, but it doesn't really involve external data, which is data external to HR and data external to the firm. So in most firms, HR Analytics tries to get the reporting, the operational reporting for HR right, and really focuses on HR instead of focusing on business outcomes. This also means that HR Analytics mostly focuses on HR teams and doesn't really relate to business data. HR Analytics tries to solve HR-specific issues rather than really business priorities, top business priorities that HR Analytics should be solving. And HR Analytics nowadays focuses on traditional KPIs, like absenteeism, like diversity, which are really related to HR, but don't bear much relevance to the rest of the business. And the main reason why HR Analytics is really focusing on HR reporting and not really making a connection with the business is because HR Analytics is positioned within the HR department. So in the survey you see someone saying, very frustrated, it's easier to teach a statistical programmer HR than an HR professional statistical programming. So the HR Analytics department is embedded within HR and they feel like they are totally not understood by the rest of HR. And another thing that's really remarkable is that HR Analytics professionals report low internal and external collaboration. And because of that, they run into a lot of problems. Before we start talking about those problems, with whom should you really communicate when you're in HR Analytics? You should talk first of all with finance. If you want to combine HR variables with business data, you need to have good relations with finance. You need to talk to the legal department, legal and compliance. Why? Because they know how you can deal with HR data and personnel data. Because personnel data is highly regulated, especially in Europe. So make sure you do communicate very well with the legal department, because that will really help you in the efforts that you do and will prevent some really potentially devastating screw-ups. In addition, work councils, labor unions, specialized consultancy companies that really know how to do HR Analytics, and universities, because they are institutions that really know what variables drive certain workplace behaviors. For example, we already talked about turnover, and it's my go-to example. If you want to analyze turnover, go and look at the meta-analyses that have been done on the drivers of turnover and use those drivers when you collect your data, because that's really a good guideline. But what you see in practice is that HR Analytics is part of HR and really not collaborating with finance, with legal, with marketing, etc. And because the HR Analytics department is not really working together with IT and not really communicating, you see very limited IT support for HR Analytics initiatives. You see that a lot of time is wasted in preparing data for analysis, so data retrieval, aggregating it from multiple systems, data cleaning, data restructuring and data organizing. And data cleaning and data restructuring is really a big thing because you see a very fragmented and outdated IT landscape where multiple systems store different data sets, where you have multiple tools to work with and multiple platforms to execute analyses. So you see a very fragmented landscape in the IT department that HR and HR Analytics doesn't really understand, and there's not much collaboration between the departments. In a different 2016 study, participants were asked, why is your organization's data not structured and available for analysis? And 77% said data is dispersed across multiple incompatible HR systems. And that's something you'll definitely come across when you start working in HR Analytics and when you start to lead an HR Analytics department. In addition, data is reported to be not reliable and not trustworthy. It's inaccurate, it's incomplete. And that's something that also goes in the data cleaning process, where when you aggregate your data, you need to structure your data and make sure it is actually reliable, it is complete, and it's accurate. And a lot of time goes in the data aggregation and data preparation, data cleaning phase. 25% of people report that different metrics and measurements are used for the same item, and a lack of raw data is also mentioned, although I don't really see that as a problem. HR is sitting on a huge pile of data, and most of the times HR departments don't really know what data they have. So when I work with companies, I usually let them list the data that they have, and then I go and start digging around in the systems, and you'll see that some of the data they report that they have, they don't have, and they usually have a lot extra data that they are not really aware of. Those are trends that you really see in the HR Analytics space. In the article by Sjoerd van der Heuvel, they also asked, how do you see HR Analytics develop in 10 years? And they said 2025. How do you see it develop? And most of the respondents agreed. They saw an organization moving towards a fact-based approach, in which HR was information-driven and not gut-feeling driven as it is now, in which HR has developed an evidence-based mindset, in which HR drivers are linked to concrete business outcomes, so financial and other performance outcomes, in which interventions are driven and tested using HR Analytics. So, for example, you're able to calculate a certain ROI of an intervention, a return on investment, or you calculate how effective training A is versus training B. And they see a transformation of established organizational models. In addition, they see way more predictive analysis being used. In the future, they see data being integrated. So that's one big data warehouse that has both HR data, that has financial data, that has data from outside the organization that they brought in on one big platform. And HR can subtract data from there. Finance can subtract data from the same platform. Marketing can subtract data from the same platform, etc. They see an integration in data analyses. It's weird that you have multiple departments doing data analysis themselves. Well, you can also integrate that. They see a standardization of measurements. That's what we talked about in the different metrics and the unreliable data. You want to standardize the measurements. They see a standardization of analytical approach and tools. So they see, in a sense, the field mature, and they see a number of tools being used by everyone. And they see HR Analytics applied to all functional HR areas. From onboarding, recruitment, selection, all the way to promotion and to who you fire. They report a lot of different HR areas, and I think it's safe to conclude that in the future they see HR Analytics apply to all HR areas. So the same group was asked, what do you really think is the value of HR Analytics? And that's the value now, today. And the very surprising thing is that most said, I don't know. HR Analytics is seen as optional, as additional. A lot of companies have heard about HR Analytics, and the people that heard of it have large expectations, but it's really hard for HR Analytics to prove its value, so HR Analytics doesn't really make money yet, so to say. And the HR business partners, also called the HR advisors, the HR team, is not ready for analytical approaches. They don't understand data. And they do need to learn how to go and how to cope with data, because if they can't, then HR Analytics is really not going to work within HR. In conclusion, the study offers a lot of kind of depressing information. What you see happen is that HR Analytics doesn't really do analytics but really focuses on operational and historic reporting, is not involved in predictive analytics, doesn't really apply to business outcomes, but HR Analytics is embedded within HR and really finds it hard to connect with different departments outside of HR, say legal, say marketing, say finance, etc. So there's something going really, really wrong. In order for HR Analytics to be successful, place HR Analytics outside of HR. And that's precisely the problem that these companies are running into, because they are not placing HR Analytics outside of HR, they are embedding HR Analytics within HR. And that results in the HR Analytics department really becoming involved in HR operational data, not linking to business outcomes, not communicating with the rest of the business. The HR Analytics department is basically making the same mistakes that HR traditionally also already made. You see that HR Analytics is really working on laying the groundworks. Trying to get data, trying to clean data, starting to learn how to analyze data, how to work with data. And it's still at a very, very early phase. HR Analytics is really focused on the here and now, on historic reporting, and definitely not focused on predictive analytics, not focused on the future. One thing that's really important to keep in mind, and is being forgotten very often in literature, is that HR Analytics is a change process, either from within HR or from outside of HR, but it's still a change process. It's a different way of thinking about HR. And that's really where the article for this week comes in. Kotter in his article describes 8 steps that you go through in order to successfully implement change. And he says, establish a sense of urgency. He says, create a powerful coalition. If you think about coalition building, we just saw that most HR Analytics leaders don't have the right coalitions in place with marketing, with finance, etc. But Kotter's message is, do create those powerful coalitions, because they will help you advance. He goes on, he says, create a vision, a shared vision, and make sure you really over-communicate that vision so everyone at some point starts believing in that vision. The 5th thing is, remove the obstacles in your way. Systematically create short-term wins. 7, don't be like Bush, don't declare that the war is over, because usually it's not. And when changes happen, make sure they stay in place. And by using this framework and using these 8 steps, a change process can take multiple years. And it can even take 5 to 7 years in order for change to really, really stick. But in the end, if it sticks, you have achieved a new status quo. And that's really what you want to achieve. So read the article again with the HR Analytics journey in mind and think how you can apply different measures within your company based on those 8 steps that Kotter talks about. Anyway, that's it for this video. Have fun reading Kotter's article. It's one of the must-reads whenever you do an MBA. This article is the article that you'll have to read, and it really, really applies to HR.